Thank you for the opportunity that you have given me to present my paper entitled Examining the Dietary Intake and Well-Being Among Armed Conflict Exposed Individuals. For the background of the study, armed conflict have a profound effect on society, affecting many facets of human existence. It is common to ignore the detrimental impact of exposure to armed conflict on well-being, especially mental health. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or also known as PTSD, anxiety, and depression are common symptoms experienced by an exposed individual. A mental health disorder is a condition of well-being in which the individual understands his or her own strength, can cope with the typical stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to contribute to his or her own community. Conflict affected individuals face food security concerns as it increases economic vulnerability, destabilizes food system, reduces farming population, destroy infrastructure, disrupt market access, which leads to food instability and hunger, and limit food diversity, lower the production input, and prolong household dependency on cheaper food. So mental health is also linked to the lifestyle habit, particularly in the dietary choices. Nutritional deficiencies can impact mood and well-being. Healthy dietary patterns are inversely related to the depression risk, while unhealthy diets rich in processed, high-fat, and high-sugar food during adolescence and adulthood have been linked to depression and anxiety. So there are several mental illness which leads to more frequent food insecurity, resulting in a less nutritious diet. Armed conflict continues to affect vulnerable society, with 13,842 deaths linked to 12 of the world's deadliest conflict in 2021. Over 100 million people have been forced to flee conflict, with 41% being the children who are affected on this conflict. And then, as we all know, that Philippines has already had the long-standing grievances leading to the violent extremists. So in this study, we intend to focus on the association of dietary intake and how the level of armed conflict exposure predicts the well-being of armed conflict exposed individual. So for the statement of the problem, number one is, what is the demographic profile of the respondent? Number two, is there a significant intercorrelation between well-being, dietary intake, behavior, and exposure to armed conflict? Number three, controlling for gender and age, is the level of exposure to armed conflict is a significant predictor of their well-being. For the research hypothesis, we have it is shown that for the question statement of the problem 2 and 3, we have here the null hypothesis, which is no significant intercorrelation exists among dietary intake, level of exposure to armed conflict, and well-being. And then for the null hypothesis for the number 2 is controlling for gender and age, exposure to armed conflict significantly predicts a victim well-being. And for the significance of the study, we have here that the study is significant to those who are exposed individual because the outcome of the study will enable them to seek assistance and guidance from the government in order to cope with the current situation. And for the policymakers, the findings of this study will assist policymakers in determining how they might address the challenges caused by the ongoing dispute. So this will guide them in building solutions and framework that will aid individuals who are exposed to armed conflicts. So for the school, the study findings will assist those school administrators in identifying students who are victims of violence and experiencing low level of food security. This will allow them to address the concerns associated with this subject and provide student support so that no children will be malnourished and then left to hunger. And then for the future researcher, the present study will help researcher find a possible sustainable solution to permanently address food poverty among individuals, especially to those exposed to armed conflict, and uplift people's livelihood. Moreover, researchers may innovate food products that are inexpensive, nutritious, and substantial. For the theoretical framework, we anchor the study to the cognitive appraisal theory and as well as the conservation of resource theory. So in this study, in the cognitive appraisal theory. In this study, it assumes that the subjective appraisal of health effect is influenced by the exposed individual interpretation of armed conflict. And for the conservation of resource theory, effective framework for predicting the outcome of terrorist attack, war, and natural disaster. And it is based on the fundamental principles such as the preeminence of resources, loss, and the necessity of investing in protection, recovery, and resource gain. So for the conceptual framework, as you can see in the schematic diagram, the figure displayed above depict the moderation model of exposure to armed conflict, the well-being of victims, and the dietary intake, which interplaying with one another in the study. For the research design, we have here the study has used the quantitative research design, and it is a descriptive cross-sectional design. So a questionnaire is provided to the respondent, and that the data will be conducted based on the questionnaire handed out to individuals who are exposed to armed conflict, and a sufficient amount of information regarding the purpose of the study was intended to be gathered using the questionnaire. For the research environment, the study will be conducted at the selected municipality in Lanao del Sur or BARM, or we also include the other Lanao provinces, which is, as we all know, BARM has the incidence rate of 63% and is one of the country poorest region. And then for the research participant, there are the total respondent is 400, and then they are 18 years old and above. Again, it is Lanao provinces, the target environment, and we use purposive sampling will be used to focus on the crucial population features, and we use novel sampling on our data gathering. And then for the research instrument, we use the self-administered food security, FFQ, World Health Organization, 5 well-being index, patient health questionnaire, PTSD checklist, Kessler psychological distress scale, positive and negative effect schedule, short form, and the generalized anxiety symptom severity inventory, and the conflict exposure checklist. And for the data gathering procedure, before the study is conducted, we have translated the instrument in a forward-backward translation to ensure that there is a semantic equivalence to the original version of the measures. So, for the administering and selection of participants, the participants are people who resides in BARM, as well as in the Lanao provinces. So, this research also have been tackled and submitted to the ethical review at our college. And then for the inclusion criteria, the participants should be individuals who reside in Lanao del Sur or in the Lanao provinces, who had at least experienced one significant armed conflict situation such as clan feuds, Marawi siege, and political violence. For the data analysis, we use the SPSS. The study also utilized a bivariate analysis to check the correlation among the variable. In addition, a regression was also used to check if the dependent variable predicts the independent variable. So for the demographic profile, as you can see in the table, it shows the result of the demographic profile of these respondents. So the sample is consists of 400 individuals that reside in the Lanao provinces who experience at least one distressing or conflict-related event. So there are 60% female respondent and 39.5% male respondent. And then the age range for the respondent is within 18 to 71 years old, and there are 81% who are considered single and had obtained a normal status of 62.5% on the body mass index. So a majority are religiously affiliated in Islam and belong to Manan tribe, and mostly of them resides in the urban areas. So aside from that, on the housing situation, it shows that 30.5% are they own their own house. They own their house and rent. The same with the own the house. The data gathered in the housing situation between owned and rented are almost alike. In terms of the social economic status, 70.5% are less had less than 11,000 monthly income. So all the responded had at least experienced a distressing event in armed conflict situation, and the sample mean score for the PCL, FSQ, PHQ, GASEU 5, and KPDS 10, and PNAS are 1.4, 1.58, 1.25, 2.59, 2.36, 2.53, and 2.5 respectively. So for the And aside from that, the results show a significant positive relationship between exposure to armed conflict and mental health well-being, which indicate that when an individual is exposed to traumatic events such as political violence, clan feuds, siege, it had increases the mental health condition among the victims. So there is this is also consistent with other study that this variable shows a correlation. So the study examined the impact of armed conflict exposure on mental well-being in Lanao provinces, revealing significant effect on post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, psychological distress, and positive and negative emotion among victim and exposed individual. The linear regression analysis revealed statistically significant and the unstandardized beta coefficient, indicating that the armed conflict exposure significantly impact these mental health issues. However, the study found no significant effect of armed conflict exposure on an individual's general well-being, suggesting that the mental health state of victim can be predicted. So I think that's end my presentation. For disclaimer, the study is the data is still being computed and still being analyzed. Thank you very much and good evening.